Hi, Makanana. I hope we don't have multiple. Makanana? Yeah, I hope we can manage to sort this down in 10 minutes. Okay, let me do that. Okay, fine. Yeah, are you winning?
Dr. Temp here.
Hi, I'm here. I'm trying to.
We appear to be having two links here. The invitation and then...
Yeah, there seem to be a bit of issues here with this link.
There's the... Let's check the calendar.
Yeah, okay. Just let's wait for what?
So there is the invitation and then there is the JFPM Fresh Produce. Those
yeah.
two.
And I think communication team must come here because I can see there's a lot of, in most of these invites, there are two things there. I think people are muted or what, I don't know.
Yeah, basically the basic problem is that there are two. There's the one that says invitation to NAMC seminar, and then there's the one that says JHB Fresh Produce Market seminar. So I saw Dr. Lubinga started the JHB Fresh Produce while we are in the invitation one. So it's the same event link I followed now from the calendar. Details that the event is not available.
I don't know this. Daniel? 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 Mr. Rambao? I don't know, the communication team must sort us out. Let me call this communication team again, link.
Hi, Doc. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're struggling to get Mark into this. Other speakers join, but also there are few people here, which I think this issue of double, link. Yeah. There are people who are registered, but they are not here. Daniel, I don't know if you guys need to sort out this issue of the link because there's a bit of a challenge here. Makanana is also, and people are muted here. Only just me and Mr. Yeah.
Okay, Doc. Okay, one thing. This is a different platform from the general meeting system. So all attendees are muted. So I will give Makanana rights to talk. But as and when they are required to talk, they will be given rights to do so to avoid disruptions and so forth. And I think issue of registration. I see Dr. Is in now. I'm not sure if he's able. I think he's able to turn on his mic because I had added him as a presenter on the platform. So I think the one who is not added is Makanana. So I'll work on that as we speak.
And
so
also
and I think
Lubinga is not. Yeah.
yes, I will do so. And I think
Thanks.
attendees will get on because we still have 4 minutes to 10. So I think
Okay.
let's not panic.
Okay, all right. No, it's fine. It's sorted.
Okay, thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
Morning.
Morning, Mark.
Morning, D. Morning, everyone else who's here early. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're just waiting for our moderator to join us. There was just a little bit of a hiccup with the link, but let's give it another 5 minutes or so. And thank you for your patience.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible from that side?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry about the delays here and there. I think there was a technical glitch in the links. Today, I'm the facilitator for today's webinar. By names, I'm Moses Herbert Lubinga, working at the National Agricultural Marketing Council under the Agro-Food Chains Unit. In the interest of time and the task given to me today, I would suggest that we do as follows. Upon my ample introduction of the topic today, I'll invite our presenters, all our guests. I'll invite our guests to take on with the presentation. Okay. I'm certain that before us we have Dr. MC Wegerith from the University of Pretoria. There is also Dr. Tempia Ndiadeva, our senior manager from the National Agricultural Marketing Council. There is also Mr. Nakana Elvis, a manager from the National Agricultural Marketing Council, leading the Smallholder Market Access Unit. With that ample highlight, allow me invite Dr. Tempia to take on with the presentation. As a housekeeping rules, please let's wait for the questions at the end of the presentation. You raise the hand and then the presenters will gladly respond. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Tempia.
Thank you, Chairperson. I need to just also indicate that another speaker that you left out is Makanana. She's also going to be part of this presentation. As the speaker, as the chairperson said, my name is Ndiadeva. I'm here heading a research division called Markets and Economic Research Center. The work we do really anchors around providing advisory services to our main stakeholders, being the minister. And some of the work that we do, of course, emanates into things like this. Some of the research papers that we write, we like to share them with our stakeholder and also just have that further engagement with the stakeholders and just understanding how can we have that research that is impactful, because we believe that any research that we do must be informed by what is happening on the ground. So today we will be sharing some of the work that we have done And this work, basically, it's a collaboration work that, between the NMC and the University of Pretoria staff. The work emanates from a contribution to a chapter in a book called Global Agricultural and Food Marketing in a Global Context, Advancing Policy, Management, and Innovation. So I thought I should just give you a background into that. Let me. I just need to figure out my presentation here. Let me unshare and share again. Thinking I'm having issues with the. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that. As the people who are going to be presenting here, it's myself, Mr. Nakana, Ms. Malungane, and Dr. Vegariv, in that order. We are all presenting because we work together on this chapter. So basically, this is how the presentation will be structured. It will be just basically motivation to give you a taste of why we thought this a particular contribution to the book was important. We'll talk about the objectives of the study, the methodology, issues around government policy and regulatory framework within the national fresh produce market, and of course, our work focuses specifically on the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market as a case study. And then there'll be findings and discussions and, of course, policy recommendations. So in terms of the motivation, we know that as a country, we are faced with the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. And I think the government of South Africa has been doing quite a lot to try to address some of these challenges. And National Developmental Plan is one area which the South African government has identified, where they identified fresh producing farming as one area with high potential for new and emerging Black farmers, especially also in terms of job creation. And we also know that national fresh produce markets are quite vital for food security in South Africa. And with the rapid urbanization and rising levels of food insecurities, we know that these markets are important in terms of providing food that is nutritious and easy access for food by the majority of people. And of course, issues of changing lifestyle is also quite important in terms of the role that the national fresh produce markets can play in terms of food access and other issues related to job creation and market access by smallholder farmers, particularly. We also know that, of course, there are competing views in terms of the viability of the national fresh produce markets due to, of course, the issues around to what extent does the distribution of fresh produce across the country is viable? What are the challenges and all that? What are the opportunities that exist in terms of using this platform as an avenue to address some of the challenges that we face in the country, such as food insecurity and job creation? So we know that also that national fresh produce markets are a form of market, and the nature of this market is actually one factor that can determine if these challenges that we are talking about and the opportunities that we believe that the national fresh produce market can offer can be realized. And I think this is what actually is the center of this chapter, where we use the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market as a case study to try to establish how the functioning of markets can contribute to some of the realization of the national developmental goals. And of course, we do that because we understand that this is these are the markets that are facing multiple pressures, such as shifts in the supermarket procurement practices, demands for transformation, in what we know that the conventional value chain is the one which is highly concentrated. And of course, there are also a lot of challenges that we know that these national fresh produce markets are facing at the municipal level. And my colleague, Mr. Nakana, will get more into details in terms of understanding or providing you with the regulatory framework that exists in terms of some of these challenges that we are facing as the I mean, in the municipal markets are facing. But of course, not only that, but to just also highlight the importance of this sector towards the economy, towards the job creation. I understand that we are in an environment where here it's multiple stakeholders. It's not a place where I think I'm going to get into the details in terms of the technicalities. I think what we are mostly interested in is about, just giving a perspective about the nature of the fresh produce market, the regulatory framework, providing some findings of the work that we have done, and also finding some recommendations that we believe that this work will not end here. It will stimulate more debate. But in short, basically, the methodology of this study was a mixed method approach where we used primary data, secondary data sources, and also information from some of the seminars and the webinars and the discussions with market stakeholders. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Nakana, who will take us through the issues related to marketing of fresh produce in South Africa and the regulatory framework. Over to you, Mr. Nakana.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Tempia. Can you please confirm if you can hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you.
we can hear you.
Thank you.
Also kindly share your video to enhance engagement?
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm trying that, but I'm afraid we might struggle in as far as that is concerned. My connection is very limited here, but let's try. If it gives us problems, we can revert back to audio only. Is it behaving, Dr. Luvinga?
Yes, so far so good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And once more, thank you very much to you, Dr. Tempia, and good morning to your colleagues. Indeed, as already introduced, I'm Elvis Nagana, and I'm the manager responsible for smallholder market access research within the Markets and Economic Research Center of the National Agricultural Marketing Council. And indeed, I am one of the contributors into the chapter as already highlighted. I have the difficult task of taking us through the maze, and as far as the regulatory framework is concerned, but of course this is made easier a bit by the fact that I would be only looking at the applicable regulations as they relate to the marketing of agricultural products in South Africa, and specifically the marketing of fresh produce. As already indicated, pardon me. As already indicated, municipal markets or national fresh produce markets have been the mainstay of fresh produce trade in South Africa for decades. And indeed, their roots have different forms that emerged more than a century ago to meet the food needs of the new and expanding cities, especially in the Gauteng area. They also play a key and critical role in as far as the food security is concerned within the country. They are also a critical point of price discovery for various fresh produce traded within the Republic, with the prices determined at these markets serving as reference prices throughout the other trading platforms in as far as fresh produce is concerned. And of course, the role as well as the significance in as far as the overall trading of fresh produce has been in decline for some time now, a point that we will touch on later on in our presentation. And of course, these markets are facing multiple pressures, such as shifts in supermarket procurement practices, demands for transformation in what remains a wide-dominated agricultural sector or agri-food sector, and the well-publicized municipal management challenges, especially as they relate to the various management systems that exist within the various fresh produce markets that exist within the country. A point again that we will touch on a bit later on in the presentation. And of course, we are talking fresh produce, which is relates mainly to the horticultural industry in general. And this is one of the biggest agricultural subsectors in South Africa, second only to livestock, and contributed roughly in excess of 92 billion to the total agricultural gross value in 2020 production year. And within this sector or subsector, the biggest contributors in terms of this huge gross value that makes the horticultural sector second are vegetables. This would include the principal vegetable within that subcategory, which is potatoes, the deciduous fruits, as well as citrus fruits. Now, these markets, these operating or trading spaces in the form of national fresh produce markets were created through regulation and are bound by law not to discriminate on anyone based on race, color, operation, or size. And this is where some of the concerns emanate from, because of the technical as well as the structural designs of these markets, as well as some of the players, especially smallholder players or role players, be it smallholder producers or farmers or vendors, where they find it a bit challenging to trade in these spaces, mainly because of the structural designs of the systems themselves. And when you look at the fact that the trading on these spaces through agents also give rise to the formation of these the relationships between producers as well as agents, and on the other one between agents and various buyers, where the scales appear to be tipped towards the participation of especially large-scale producers as well as large-scale buyers. With some of the conversations with the smallholders indicating that they are finding it a bit difficult, especially because they do not have the kind of requisite resources necessary to participate in efforts to package or grade and make sure that the produce is of acceptable standards for trading at these particular platforms. Am I done on the previous slide? Can we move to the previous slide, please? Okay, yes, we are done. Thank you. Yes, and as I indicated, the markets themselves have witnessed limited growth in terms of volumes of trade or produce traded, despite the overall increases in production of both fruits and vegetables over the past 20 years. So when you look at this particular graph that we have here, so the long and the short of it is, if you look at the year 2001, we had roughly 30% of the produce that was produced, or fresh produce that was produced in South Africa, being traded through national fresh produce markets. In other words, roughly 2.7 million tons of the roughly 9 million tons was traded through the national fresh produce markets, which gives us this 30% in 2001. But fast forward to 2020, you have roughly 3 million of the total 15 million produced in the country being traded, translating to roughly 20 or 21%. And specifically, when you look at the volumes of fruit sold, there was actually a 5% decline in the volumes between 2001 and 2020. And when you go through the data for vegetables, we had an increase of 25%, but this was below the 25% increase in total production that was achieved during the 20-year period that we are seeing. So you can see from this graph that whereas total production increased quite dramatically, the increases in the volumes traded through the markets were not that significant. Again, pointing back to the point that we highlighted earlier regarding the fact that there seems to be some struggles in as far as the operations of the fresh produce markets are concerned. Now, on the overall government policy as well as the regulatory framework, within the Republic, those of us who have been around for a bit longer would recall the dual processes of deregulation as well as liberalization that the country embarked on during the late 80s and mid 1990s, which culminated in the promulgation of the Marketing of Agricultural Products Act number 47 of 1996, as amended. And this act really heralded the deregulation era, where the position of government in as far as the marketing of agricultural products is concerned was that of a minimalist approach as opposed to the previously the highly regulated regime where the state was heavily involved in the marketing of agricultural products. And linked to that decision to liberalize and deregulate the agricultural marketing space, the department or the government also developed the agricultural marketing policy to spell out the kind of limited government intervention that stance that the government had taken. And that stance was really premised on three principles. In that there was that position or principle that government intervention in agricultural marketing should be limited to the correction of market imperfections and socially unacceptable effects, and that government intervention must prioritize targeted non-market mechanisms. In other words, mechanisms that would result in the least effects in as far as the distortions in the markets are concerned, and that government intervention in agricultural marketing should allow for export marketing arrangements that enhance the nation's welfare as a whole, as opposed to the previous single channel export marketing schemes that had some adverse effects as far as the nation's welfare is concerned. And in an effort to operationalize the implementation of or facilitate the implementation of the agricultural marketing policy, the government also developed the integrated marketing strategy. And this is the strategy that consisted of various marketing support programs or pillars. And as you will see, this supported the establishment and operations of commodity groups, marketing cooperatives, establishment of marketing infrastructure, agro-logistics, market information skills, and all that. And as you can see with these various support programs and or pillars that are proposed for implementation in the marketing strategy, attention is given to those policy principles that relates to the correction of market imperfections and put in place marketing support programs that would lead to the least effects in as far as the market distorting effects are concerned within the markets. Going into the regulation of fresh produce markets and agents themselves, there are principally two sets of legislation governing agents and the markets themselves. In as far as the agents are concerned, the three categories, including export, fresh produce, and livestock, are principally regulated through the Agricultural Produce Agents Act. This is Act number 12 of 1992 is amended, and and really the object of this act is to regulate the conduct of the agents and enhance the dignity of the persons practicing the occupation of agencies, and to also develop the rules of conduct in as far as these agents are concerned. The act itself also establishes the Agricultural Produce Agents Council, or the APAC as we know it, as well as the Fresh Produce Fidelity Fund. This is the fund that specifically reimburses fresh produce producers for losses incurred under certain circumstances while the produce is in the care of the agent themselves. Now, the markets that are owned by municipalities, this is on the other set of regulations for markets, are principally regulated through municipal bylaws and municipal procurement and financial procedures. And of course, especially on these ones that are owned and managed by the municipalities themselves, there has been some concerns raised by certain stakeholders regarding the compliance with municipal regulations as well as procedures, and markets being used as cash cows in other instances, and the revenues being generated from these markets being diverted to other activities that the municipalities deem fit, resulting in a situation where there are no reinvestments being made into the market infrastructure themselves, and leading to a situation where the space within which the agents as well as other fresh produce markets participants operate in a state that is not conducive for trading in these spaces. And these markets generally that we have, roughly 22 or so, currently in the Republic, can be categorized into 4 based on the issues around ownership as well as management, with the first category being markets that are owned and operated by the municipalities themselves, with the examples like Tshwane as well as Devon. Those that are corporatized municipal entities, where you have the municipality retaining ownership of the market, but in terms of management, this entity being managed by a separate corporate entity within the municipality, with the example of Joburg Market being one of them, where you have a separate entity with its own board operating and managing the market. And then you have municipally owned but privately operated, where you have the municipality retaining ownership, but the management of the entity being outsourced to a private entity. Such can be observed with the Cape Town market. And then you have the privately owned and privately operated, and this talks to mainly the new markets such as Moketsi market. Now, as we were writing and as we speak now, there are efforts to amend the current Agricultural Produce Agents Act, the APA Act, for various reasons. Here we just mentioned a few of those. And this, amongst others, talks to the fact that the current Act does not provide for APAC to undertake appropriate investigations, inspections, and disciplinary actions, especially against export and livestock agents who may maltreat their principals and or farmers, and also the fact that the Act, as it is currently, does not provide for export and livestock agents to take out fidelity insurance to protect farmers and or principals against losses which might occur while the produce is in the care of agents, and that exports agents are currently not compelled to open and operate trust accounts, as is the case with fresh produce agents. This in itself exposing principals and or produce in events where there might be losses, and there might be mix-ups in as far as the monies belonging to the agents as well as the principals are concerned. I know the department is currently engaging various stakeholders in an effort to consult on some of these amendments that are currently being proposed in the Act. Next slide, please.
Yes, Mr. Nakana. Yes, Mr. Nakana. How many slides more that you have on your side?
I believe, can you, next one? This should be the last one. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Yeah. This is the last one.
Thanks. It would be good if you could cut it shorter. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Program Director. We have already alluded to the some of the concerns regarding the operations of the National Fresh Produce Markets, which were actually raised as early as 1997, as we indicate, due to deteriorations in market infrastructure as well as service standards in some of these markets. And this prompted the launching of Section 7 committees, investigations at the behest of the Minister of Agriculture, which really concluded and recommended on a number of issues or areas of concern. I should hasten to also indicate that these several Section 7 committee culminated in roughly 2009 with the establishment of what was then called the Ministerial Interim Committee on the MIC, which sought to clarify the various recommendations that were made by the Section 7 committee in preparation for implementation. And as I indicated, this various Section 7 committee recommended on a number of issues, including ownership and management, the separation thereof, the legal framework, specifically touching on the need for the establishment of a national entity that would look at the operations and the development of the markets, the commission system, where there was also a recommendation regarding the introduction of the wholesale system in addition to the current commission system on the same market floors. Issues around infrastructure, where there was a need to look at the possibility of ring-fencing some of the 5% that is generated smart revenue for reinvestments into market infrastructure, as well as issues relating to market access, as well as transformation, where there were certain quotas set to ensure that there's transformation in this operating sphere of the markets. Now, in 2013, with the continuation deterioration in service standards, there was this need, or there was this trigger by key stakeholders such as IMASA and Potato South Africa to approach the department for immediate intervention. And this led to the birth of the initiative called Project Rebirth under the leadership of the Donald. And there was quite a lot of mileage covered under a very short space of time under this initiative, the Project Rebirth, with codes of best practice for national fresh produce markets has been developed, published, and implemented across various municipalities, and with a mentorship program also developed and implemented, where successful markets were assisting other markets to implement these codes of best practice as well as standard operating procedures. The efforts of the Project Rebirth culminated in the steering committee developing what was then known as the National Fresh Produce Markets Council bill or draft bill, which sought to provide for the regulation of the national fresh produce markets by creating a central entity that would look at issues regarding the development, management, as well as transformation of national fresh produce markets. And the draft bill, after being submitted for scrutiny by the legal advisors, was then ruled as unconstitutional, as markets, in terms of the constitution, fall within the local sphere of government in as far as the regulation is concerned, and therefore the establishment of a national entity to regulate them would therefore be deemed to be unconstitutional. And that is where the Project Rebirth initiative really lost its momentum. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you. I believe it's Miss Makanana Mulangane. You're welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Makanana Malungana, and I'm a master's candidate at the University of Pretoria, and I'll be heading up the section on the case study of the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market, which is my key research site for my master's project. I would like to start off by saying that the ideation or the origination or the origins of the market is most important to understand, as it contextualizes how the market has evolved over time. This is a short synopsis of what has become of the market, and will sort of give an overview of what has happened in the market thus far. The market was informally started in 1886 with the discovery of gold and it was pronounced as Market Square, and it was amongst a few farmers who were staying in the area. They were they were giving food, they were selling food to the people who were there to with the gold diggings. Thereafter, in 1887, a concession of the management of the market was issued by the Kruger government. And thereafter, a building was erected. I have pictures of the building, which I'll share in due course. In 1913, the market moved to a new building, which was an 11-hectare piece of land, and that was Newtown Market. And then in 1974, it moved to where it is now, which is a 63 piece of hectare. This picture that you see right now is the market as it was in 1899. As you can see, the selling of produce happened outside, and then the building was in the background. Next slide, please. Please go back one slide. And then this one is inside Newtown Market, where the market moved in 1913. As you can see, it looks similar to the current market, and activity happens along the sides and the walls. Next slide, please. This is Johannesburg Fresh. Please move 2 slides down. Again. No. Yes. There we go. This is Joburg Market when it moved in 1974 to its current location. And the activities are similar, but as you can see, it's more organized compared to the picture of Newtown Market. Next slide, please. The Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market is a wholesale and retail fresh produce market based in City Deep, which is about 5 kilometers from the Johannesburg CBD. It operates for 24 hours and sells between 4 a.m. and 11 a.m. on weekdays and from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Saturdays. As Elvis mentioned, is owned by the COJ, but it's corporatized. Therefore, it's owned by the COJ, but it operates with a semi-independent board. It directly employs around 313 employees. This was in 2001. And facilitates the sale of produce for more than 5,000 farmers, ranging from across Limpopo, the Free State, and Mpumalanga provinces. It has 19 registered market agencies, and it facilitates the sales of about 10,000 buyers a day. As of 2022, it had amassed sales of worth 9 billion plus sales. The Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market is organized into 3 main hubs. There's the potato and onion hub, the fruit hub, and the vegetable hub. And then there are 2 smaller markets, which are the Mandela Market and the Unity Markets. In these markets, the Unity and Mandela Markets, the produce that is sold there only comes from the main hubs and are the main wholesalers that sell there. Most market agencies are owned by families of Portuguese, English, and Afrikaner descent and have been operational in the market for decades. Licensed market agents are primarily white males and are 2nd and 3rd generation market agents. An example of one of the people we interviewed for the study, it included Rodrigo, who had immigrated to South Africa in 1977 with his family, with his parents from Portugal, who was there to help his uncle operate his market agency at the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market. Over time, Rodrigo's father started his own fresh produce selling business, operating under his uncle's market agency. After learning the ropes, Rodrigo opened his own market agency, fresh produce, not market agency, but fresh produce selling business under the same market agency. And in 2021, Rodrigo operated from the same sales floor as his 2 sons, who partnered and opened their own business after learning the trade, and they shared the use of equipment such as jack lifts, cold storage, and so forth. It is worth noting that this sort of arrangement also occurs in terms of the buyers that buy from them, and they also go on to share or attend each other's weddings, funerals, and things like that. The organization also goes into buyers, where you'll find that Portuguese buyers from greengrocers that are mostly common in suburb areas buy from Portuguese market agency, creating ethnic clustering. The majority of people selling on the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market are salespersons and are not registered with APAC. However, there are a handful of Black licensed market agencies, like Dineo, who's one of a few female Black market agents that is registered with APAC. She employs around 5 people, and she sources her produce from as far north as Limpopo as well. To transact on the sales floor, market agents and buyers are registered with the Freshmark system and are issued smart cards by the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market, and buyers need identification to be allocated a card. Sales between market agents and buyers are concluded through the use of a private treaty. This was incepted in 1968, if I'm not wrong. The commission-based system for the fresh, which is the same commission-based system for all fresh produce markets. The market agent gets between 5 and 7.5%. The market gets 5%, and the balance thereof, which is between 7.5 and 90%, goes to the farmer. As this is an infographic showing what I've just alluded to, what happens is the farmer and the market agent agree on an average selling price, and then that fresh produce is delivered to the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market, and then the market agent takes on the produce, and then he puts it up on the Freshmark system. One of the buyers buys the produce, and the produce either moves outside or inside the market. When it moves inside the market, it moves either into Unity Market or Mandela Market, or one of the food providers or the agro-processors are available there. And when it moves outside the market, it moves towards caterers, supermarkets and traders, schools, and exporters. And then in terms of how the money is distributed, above hubs, you can see the buyer's card is issued by the market, and thereafter the money is distributed into 5.5% to 7.5% to the market agent, 5% to the market, and 82.5% back to the farmer. One of the key things that came up in the research that was underway is the vital role of informal traders. Informal traders accounted for between 50 to 60% of municipal market produce sold was sold to the informal sector. And in the same breath, over 60 to 70% of municipal market sales are to buyers in the informal sector. If we take into consideration the sales that were incurred by the 17 municipal markets in 2020, you'll see that from a turnover of 17 billion rands, 7.8 billion went to the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market, and therefore 3.9 billion, which is quite a large number, was sold to the informal sector. This actually highlights the role of the informal sector. Another key observation that came up from the research was that the informal sector was a very dynamic market and included various types of buyers. There were small-scale sellers, buyers such as the trolley vendors that you see in the streets, and then there were large-scale buyers. I'll pay specific attention to domestic informal wholesalers and informal wholesale exporters. Domestic informal wholesalers could spend on average about 50,000 rands a day on produce at the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market. These sellers would sell to small informal traders who were based in places such as Tembisa, Soweto, and so forth. They were critical to the running and the governing of the market. Other important sellers were the informal wholesale exporters, and most specifically the Maputo mamas. The Maputo mamas are mamas or ladies or women who sell produce, who buy produce in South Africa in order to sell it to people in their respective countries, in this case, Mozambique. As you can see from the image that is there, these are a group of 4-ton trucks that are bound for Mozambique. The produce that you can see there is worth over 300,000 rands, with each of them, which these informal traders send overboard. Despite their vital role, there isn't much understanding of how informal traders are critical to the governing, to the running of the market. Next slide, please. Informal traders make fresh produce available and accessible, especially in low-income areas. A number of studies have clearly shown this, as they are selling produce at lower prices and in flexible and small quantities that fit buyers' needs and ability to pay. This was shown in the research and was highlighted in many instances. They also sell in locations closer to where people live, work, and travel, and at times on interest-free credit. Notwithstanding the value and contribution of informal traders to the Johannesburg produce market, there has been no attention paid to informal traders in integrated municipal and special development plans. For example, the City of Johannesburg 2016 project. Instead, interviews with street traders and those within the informal sector has shown that there has been harassment towards informal traders, particularly from the Johannesburg Metropolitan Police Department. And there's also a lack of understanding of how their contribution is essential to municipal fresh produce markets, which have been on a downturn since direct marketing has become the mainstay of farmers in recent years. Another thing that has also shown that the lack of understanding of informal traders in their way is in the COVID-19 regulations that showed that there was a dip in produce during that time. So here's an example of how informal traders are essential to food accessibility. As you can see, in this case, we are talking about tomatoes per kilogram and onions per kilogram. The farmer gets 11 Rand, 63 Rand. And then the commission that the market gets, which is 5%, gets 11 Rand, 66 Rand. The municipal market gets 13 Rand, 29 Rand, and the retail price is around 28 Rand. Despite the disparity in the prices, as you can see, the farmer always gets less. The farmer is getting the same price from the market, whether sold by the supermarket or the street trader. So the street traders' margins are not as high as those of commercial supermarkets, but are much better. As you can see, the markup of informal traders are lower compared to that of commercial supermarkets. This indicates that informal traders are essential to what is going on and are essential to food accessibility and also eradicating the three plagues of South Africa, which are poverty, inequality, and unemployment, in particularly food insecurity. Thank you. Oh.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Makanana. Colleagues, just to remind you, we have a chat box. In case you have a question, please put it there. I'm seeing there's some bit of activity ongoing. Yes, let me invite Dr. Mark to take it on. Thank you.
Thanks, Moses. Thanks to everyone for attending and to my fellow presenters. I'm glad there's so much interest in this. And I'm just going to talk through some of the sort of recommendations we get to and share some reflections on some of the key findings from the research, some of which are in the chapter. The link's been shared in the chat. The chapter's luckily available open access. But some of what I reflect on also comes from the wider research we're doing on the municipal market and these sort of market links. So I hope people will engage in the chat as well and engage with questions soon that we'll have. Could I just go back to the previous slide with those prices, just to explain a few things about those prices? Because I just want to emphasize the importance of these markets. And I think just first to say that the price data on some of this price data is not in the chapter, but comes from another ongoing project we have, which is tracking the fresh produce prices from street traders. We found there wasn't any consistent data coming from that sector, or despite its importance. So just to elaborate on like the example of onions, and onions, these prices were just taken as a snapshot in February 2023. And it's interesting to look at this because onions had gone up 47% in 1 year, which is a very big increase. That's the retail price, where you can see the red arrow pointing to that retail price as per Stats SA data. So they've gone up 47%. At that point, the consumer in the normal retail, mostly formal sector retail, was paying 22 Rand 53 a kilo for these. And as you can see here, the farmer was only getting 5 Rand 39. So onions were available in our municipal wholesale markets in February at an average price of 6 Rand 16 per kilo. That's the data across all the municipal markets. And so you can see out of that, there's a commission going to the market, 77 cents, and the farmer's left with that 5 Rand 39 a kilo. One of the things I want to emphasize here is that the big part of the price is definitely not due to the municipal market. The municipal market, the commission, that's 77 cents. That is the entire amount, the percentage to the agent and the percentage to the market from that sale. And out of that, the market has to be maintained. Agents have to make their money and so on. So I think one thing I want to emphasize, definitely the municipal markets are not big contributors to those high prices. They're actually a relatively low cost part of the whole distribution. Something is happening between municipal markets and the final retail price. But this is where also the street traders, as Makanana was saying, find a gap. And you can see the street traders selling onions in February from our data with data collection in 3 different sites in South Africa. The street traders were selling at an average of 15 Rand 53 a kilo. So that's considerably less than the formal retail sector as tracked by Stats SA, showing this big saving to customers. So that's a very important saving for a key vegetable, and you can see the data there for tomatoes as well. So this is really important as in terms of accessibility of fresh produce, which is important for a balanced diet for poorer people in poorer neighborhoods. But the street trade is still viable. They're still making quite a reasonable markup, even quite a high markup, 152% in February. I think that's because of the way the prices had moved in that month. So they're still making a markup, they still have viability, and they're also creating livelihoods for themselves, which is important, while they're also making food more accessible. But the municipal market is key in this system. I see Derek's hand. I think we'll come back to questions just now. I'll try not to be too long. So Derek, if you can hold the question, I think, but I'm also open to Moses, your guidance. But I think what we see here is the importance of the street trader and the combination of the street trader with the market. If these municipal markets weren't there, the street traders would have nowhere else where they could be going and buying wholesale and creating this vibrant market, which, as Makanana indicated, in just from the Joburg Fresh Produce Market is around 4 billion Rand a year, plus any markup and so on. So there's a vibrant, important market, and the municipal market system is critical to that. On the supply side, the municipal market is also critical for farmers, as has been mentioned. I just want to emphasize. So, and while there are constraints and there are challenges that small-scale farmers face in accessing these markets, and they often don't feel they're getting as good a deal as they would like, it is still a market they can access. The vast majority of our small-scale farmers cannot possibly supply the supply chains of the Pick n Pays and the ShopRites and so on. There is no option for them there. There's only few who can get into that, and they tend to be in that still on very unequal terms because of the highly unequal power relations. But we've interviewed small-scale farmers, and even from north of Limpopo, who would sell, if the price is right, to the Epping market in Cape Town and certainly supplied Tshwane, Joburg, and so on. So this is, imperfect as it may be, it is a very critical and important market for our small-scale farmers. And I think even if we look at the National Development Plan and so on, the horticulture sector has been identified as one of those sectors where there can be transformation, where there is potential. And it is one of the sectors where we see quite a large number of small-scale black farmers there. So even for land reform, if we want successful land reform, these markets are critical because they're part of the whole system that can enable farmers to be viable and successful. So so as I'm saying, and this is in terms of the second point on this side, they're especially important for sort of broad-based nature of the sector, both on the primary production side and on the retailing side as well. So that's, they are essential, I think, for transformation in the agricultural sector, transformation in land reform. So the reducing number of these markets, including the gradual privatization of municipal markets, is a serious threat to the sector. And this is happening slowly. We see every year another market, I think it was the year before last, Nelspruit went private, another one went private. So we're seeing, in a sense, the erosion of the publicly owned markets. And I don't think we should just let this go quietly. We need to really look at the implications of that. And the implications, if you don't have these kind of markets, would be probably more concentration of ownership and less opportunity for small farmers and for the large informal and small scale enterprises that buy from these markets and retail to them. So we really need more information and tracking of the implications of this privatization and loss of control of this. So, and then we need to also, certainly we would argue that we need more, not less, public markets, and we need them to be more decentralized as well. I mean, one of the weaknesses at the moment is that there's really a small number. It was 22, including the now privatized markets. I think we're left about 17 fully municipal owned markets across the country. So these are large markets that are rather concentrated, and that makes them also less accessible than they could be for small-scale farmers and for buyers. So being close enough to those large markets and to where you're selling is important for these informal sector retailers. But those who are further away, of course, don't benefit from that. So definitely we would argue we need more rather than less of these markets. Please just go back to the previous slide for a minute. I appreciate maybe you're trying to move me along quickly. Of course, there are these challenges of poor management and lack of investment. I think Elvis touched on these in the markets. But one of the fundamental issues is this competition from the corporate supply chains. So when Elvis showed us that graph that showed there's this increase in production and overall sales of horticulture in the country, but the share, but a very little increase in what's going through the municipal markets. A lot of that is accounted for by the fact that supermarkets are setting up increasingly their own direct supply chains. The problem is these are highly then controlled by concentrated supermarket corporations. And if we look like Pick and Pay, for example, only has 3 distribution centers in the country. So, and they then want to buy at a particular scale and quality that the vast majority of farmers can't fit into. So that shift to the direct buying through those supply chains is one of the threats to, I think, the municipal markets and threats to overall competition then in the horticulture sector. Next slide, please. Okay, so overall, we definitely argue for more investment in the municipal and public markets. We have to protect them from the wider financial and political problems within the municipalities that we know about. But at the same time, we can't let municipalities off the hook, and we would argue for a strong state role in trying to make sure and maintain these markets. And we need to look at more physical and regulatory space for the traders that the Makanana referred to that make these municipal markets viable and are the end retailers for many of our farmers, from the biggest farmers to some of the smallest farmers, interestingly. So at the moment, and Makanana touched on this, we're seeing a lot of constraints in that. And it's very telling that when you look at the spatial development plan or the integrated development plan for Joburg, they say quite a bit about the municipal market, obviously it's theirs and so on, but they say nothing about any other marketing. So there's a blindness in the planning and in the regulations to this other part, this retail side that goes out into the informal settlements, into the townships and so on, and is critical to the viability of the municipal market. So it needs to be, that should be factored much more into municipal planning. And we have to explore ways to deconcentrate the control in the market. So, it's going through, like Joburg has this, I think it was 19 agents that, and actually, when you look at it, there's 3 or 4 of the largest agents control almost half of the sales. So there's a high level of concentration in that. And yes, the many calls, and it would seem logical and obvious that we need to deconcentrate that. It's a sort of regulated oligopoly, rather strangely. But I would urge caution when we do that, because let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, because these do perform a key function. And I think the social relations involved in the market have to be understood. And as Makanana explained and gave us the example of one farmer, you see multi-generational connections, and those are not just the trader taking over from their father or learning from their father and so on, and it is often men, as was mentioned, but it's the relationship with the farmer, and the relationship of trust between the agent and the farmers is critical to the functioning of the whole market. So you can't just throw that out because we're unhappy with some of the concentration there. So we would really urge, or I would at least urge, caution when we talk about these changes, because the regulated nature of the markets has positive things like managing the size of the commission. So agents are restricted in the size of commission they can take. Without that kind of restriction, we could see a lot of opportunism, which could be at the expense of farmers in the market. So the regulations are there for certain reasons, and that's why we have to understand the history and why these regulations are put in place as they are. And some of the reasons are to avoid the exploitation of farmers, and that's why regulating a maximum commission. It's also that an agent has to have a certain size of operation to be viable. I certainly believe some of them are now very big and have become too big, but again, you can't just take that apart without thinking very carefully about it, or you might destroy the whole fabric of it. And if you understand the way in which the functioning is built on trust, built sometimes over generations, then you need to be cautious about how you break that up. And this sort of, the importance of trust in the functioning of such markets is not just a South African thing. We see that in markets around the world, the trust and social relations that are involved. If a farmer puts his produce on a truck and sends it from Nelspruit or somewhere near Nelspruit to the market, to somebody who's going to sell it for them there's a lot of trust involved in that. And they're going to get the report back later for the agent what happens, and they're going to have to trust that the agent did the best they could for them. And that often depends on that farmer knew that agent's father, and they do have the brides together and so on. Now in South Africa, it takes on a racial and ethnic sort of composition, which is unfortunate. But we can't get away from the social relations. How can we shift those social relations to work in a way that is less exclusive and more open? And certainly we have talked to black farmers who, when they do get a good relationship going with an agent, whatever the race of that agent, that becomes invaluable to them, and they get a lot of advice from that. And of course, we also have the bad experiences, but I think we have to look at both sides of that. And certainly we have to be cautious when we're going to intervene and interfere in that sort of process. And part of the caution then would lead me to urging, and maybe that's just because I am a researcher or academic, but we do need more research. We don't have analysis going on about these different models that are being experimented now with in the different markets, as Elvis mentioned. So we have a whole change of structure. We have 4 basic different models of markets going on, but there's no ongoing research to learn from what's happening with that. We also have a lack of data. So there is data collected in the markets, but at the moment, we can't break down things like the race of buyers and sellers there. We can't get clear analysis of the different scale of buyers and sellers. So there's a lot that could be done to gather other data that would better inform the sort of discussions that we're having and we need to have about the future of these markets. So I'm not sure, I think that was the last slide. I would just conclude by saying that these markets are essential. They're essential for the horticulture sector, which is essential for people getting balanced diets and access to food. We have seen how the markets linked to informal traders and the small and medium enterprises is a very effective and efficient supply route that does make food more accessible compared to the supermarket options. We can see how the supermarket supply chains don't work for small farmers, and these markets with their imperfections do. So I would certainly urge that these need to be built on, they need to be valued, they do need to be transformed, but they need to be transformed in a way that doesn't disrupt what is working well. I think we're going to take questions, so thanks for listening.
All right. To the presenters and the authors of this book chapter, I believe it's the time that we can't thank you enough for the information so far shared on this platform. From my side, I think there's quite a lot that I've learned. I believe the audience as well. not to mention the Maputo mamas and the informal markets. Well, through the chat, we have received a number of questions, but we believe many more are still coming in, as well as, I would say, remarks. So let me begin by highlighting one. There is one from Kolisa. I'll go by the first name. The question is, there is a slow rate of adapting to new technology ever since COVID showed us that things can be done better. Is there room to upgrade in doing or in using modern technologies, especially when selling the produce? Again, from the same participant. This is from Abdullah. He says, how do we track sales across borders, especially from our fresh produce markets? The other question, I'm mentioning these top three that came through the chat. Thereafter, I think the members will be able to raise their hands to ask directly. The second question, the third question came from Richard, and he says, how long will the APSC Act amendment process be finalized? I think it's building on the fact that there is a lot of ambiguity in the pricing of produce along the value chain. For the remarks, there was one from Victor. He says, there is no transparency in price determination along the value chains. Farmers are being exploited. And then there is another remark from Francoise who says, marketplaces are platforms where price discovery should occur. However, based on the information being shared, it looks like it's a place where farmers are only become to be price takers rather than price makers. And lastly, there have been about 3 comments from Neil. Neil represents seed to harvest. I think they render training services in how to produce organic products. His question is, how can they link up with so that they can extend their outreach, especially in other provinces? For now, allow me pose these questions or transfer the questions to the presenters so that they can respond. And thereafter, it will be a session where we shall take hands from the audience to ask questions directly. Thank you. Over to the authors of the book chapter. May I ask Dee to lead us? Dr.
Yeah.
Dee.
Okay. Thank you very much for the questions. Perhaps the issues related to the finalization of the ongoing negotiations around, I think it was around the APAC, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Mr. Nakana can come in. I just need to see that question exactly. It was about around the legislation. When is that going to be completed?
Should I come in on that one?
Yeah, you can come in.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the participant for asking the question. from where we are as the NAMC, we might struggle a bit to answer that question, but I can give you our understanding in terms of how the process should unfold going forward. As I indicated, the department is currently undertaking consultations with various stakeholders in the various provinces. And as soon as that process is done, the understanding is that all the inputs and or comments received will be consolidated, and the current draft bill be amended to reflect those comments and the decisions that the department would have made on those comments. And from there, the department would then take the bill back to Parliament for Parliament to undertake its own processes, and after which it shall be processed until the president for signing. With processes like this, one is really. We really can't really say how long it will take, depending on the programs of the department as well as the program of Parliament. That's how long it can take. But if there's somebody from the department who might have something to add to the response that I just gave, that would be most appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nakana, for that. Yes, indeed, I think these processes are outside of our hands. As the Marketing Council, we really don't get involved in the negotiations per se, but this is a mandate which falls within the department. Let me just also try to attempt questions around the transparency in the price determination and tracking of the fresh produce with our neighbors. I think at the end, there was an emphasis from Mark that there's a need for us to conduct more research if we need to address some of these issues. Issues around tracking of the fresh produce, it's a big challenge. Within the NMC ourselves, from the Section 7 study, that was conducted, I think it was in 1996, if I'm not mistaken, there was a recommendation that at least 30% of the fresh produce traded in the national fresh produce must be coming from the Black agents. We do produce reports that talk to that issue, but they are mostly estimates. And the major challenge that we face, of course, is the fact that we are not able to track exactly how much of this fresh produce that gets to be traded in the national fresh produce come directly from the from the small scale farmers. So the issue of tracing and tracking, it's an issue that it's really important, it's urgent. And I think that collaboration between the private and the public sector will be quite crucial on that. So I thought I should add into that, but let me hear if maybe my colleagues also need to add into that.
Yeah, maybe I can. I mean, Makanana was talking about that, and she might come in. I just wanted to pick up on a few things. I mean, I think Francois Knowles has noted the price. I'm just looking for that message, sorry, as I'm throwing it. The markets are platforms where price discovery takes place through the agents, ultimately allows the farmer to be a price maker as opposed to a price taker. Of course, this is debatable and farmers complain. But I mean, like, even if you ask me about my salary at University of Pretoria, I'm going to complain and say they should be paying me more. So it's a bit simplistic sometimes when if we're simply going to say, okay, the farmers complain, they want more money, to think that's the end of the story. We have to look at the whole structure and where is most of that value going. And that's why I was showing some of that information. Certainly most of the value, the problem is not starting in the market. And I think this issue of price discovery, I think we shouldn't underestimate the importance of that, because what happens when you don't have open public markets in terms of setting of prices? So certainly farmers, when they try to get into relationships, say in supply chains or supermarkets, there's no transparency at all. And if they have no alternative, then they are really in trouble. So practically what it means, and we talk to small black farmers who are doing this all the time, and the traders do it on the other end as well, that they can go onto the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market website and they can check the prices, and they do check the prices. So even when they're not buying there, if they're going into negotiations somewhere, they are checking those prices, which they can do online, and that helps inform them in their negotiations. So we shouldn't overlook the importance of some of those things, and what happens if that falls away from there. So I saw a question from Vuyiswa on harassment. I think it was directed to Makanana Malungani. I could say a few things about harassment, but I think Makanana was directed to you, so maybe I will only add if you haven't covered everything. And yeah.
Morning. In this case, harassment is referring to when informal traders are operating where they come from. So from the street corners and so forth, and where their food is taken away from them. So it's not harassment at the Johannesburg Fresh Produce Market. They are well welcome there, and my research has shown that. And then your second question, Buisa, was that are you aware that the Johannesburg market is moving towards a smart market infrastructure where there will be a whole lot of change in terms of how trading will be done in Joburg market? And your third question was that Mandela has changed to Tiamo market. So the study was conducted from 2020 until 2021. So that's why that I still use Mandela market. I am aware that it's changed to Tiamo market. And at that time when I was doing the study, they were still building the new Tiamo market as mentioned here. The discussion was particularly mentioned in the understanding of informal traders, as what I was stating was that informal traders are not considered at an overall integrated plan where they are considered as very integral members or stakeholders into what fresh produce markets are in the greater scheme of things. Thank you.
Maybe
And Mark, maybe you can add.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, we've, like I said, we're doing this price tracking with street traders in different areas, and we've also asked them, some questions about different forms of harassment they face and so on. So it is a very regular occurrence that street traders would face harassment where they're trading, but also often on the way to the markets. And I think anyone who goes to the Joburg Fresh Produce Market, you'll see almost every morning there's Metro Police sort of stationed on the road there, stopping the bakkies coming out of the market. And now, I'm not saying the Metro Police shouldn't enforce traffic rules, but a lot of it amounts to harassment, including bribe taking and so on, and stories of where you haven't done anything wrong, but the Metro Police are going to unpack your bakkie, or sometimes even with the trolley traders, unpack the trolley, leave the stuff on the ground. Now the trader has to put it back in there. Now it seems unfortunate that the Metro is, those Metro Police work for the same boss, if you like, at the end of the day. It's they're a municipal service, just like the market's a municipal service. But one is harassing people who are essential to the other. And of course, this affects the viability for the trader and whether they carry on trading if they face these kind of problems on a regular basis, including the problems they face when they have to get to these markets. So some addressing of those kind of issues would be good. But beyond preventing the harassment, what we'd argue for is that there must be much more attention given to creating more trading spaces that create more opportunities for people to create livelihoods and more opportunities for competition, choice for customers who can buy, don't have to only go to the supermarket, but can choose where they're going to buy, which would be good for a vibrant sector. I saw also this question from Lighting Gobeni. Some of those, I think we have other people on the call, guests, who might be able to answer some of the questions better than we can around measures, things like measures to reduce the regulatory barriers and, recommendations for fostering collaboration. Certainly from my side, if people want to follow up, I think you can find my email easily. If you search my name, Mark Weigerif, you can find my UP email, and we're happy to engage with people. We do know from our research that, the Joburg market in particular, and some of the others, have various outreach programs to farmers. They also have had various engagements with traders. So they're not, blind to these issues, and there's various attempts to engage, but with varying sort of levels of success as well. So But as I said, maybe there's people here who can say more directly to that than I can.
All right. Thanks, Tim, for the knowledge shared so far. I'm seeing a hand. Is it MM from my side? I can say MMM. Please, the floor is yours, Matthews.
Thank you so much, Program Director. My question and my interest in knowing from your research is the issue of the collective buying and collective marketing of those smallholder farmers. But I think without that, individual farmers are going to be struggling to have an impact in the market as well as an impact in the privately owned market. So in your research, did you come across such? Thank you.
Maybe before the team responds, also allow me read out these questions so that you can handle them together. Food waste or food losses along the value chains are key. To what extent, what is the extent of losses incurred by informal traders who operate in the open air environment? Yep, I'll leave those two to the team to kind of address it.
I can have a first go, if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
On the collective buying and selling, I think we've seen collective buying of small traders, and Makanana could elaborate that, where there's collaboration. But there's also these key intermediaries in the buying, these sort of mid-level buyers who buy wholesale from Joburg and other markets and then sell on. So they're creating the local markets that become critical then to traders elsewhere. So they're not working collectively, but they form a key part of this. On the farmer side, I mean, there are various farmer collaborations, but I think a lot of those, especially the sort of cooperatives that get formed because the government says you should form a cooperative to get money from us, don't tend to work very well, to be frank. But what we see is other forms of collaboration, aggregation. So there are these trucks, for example, that in particular areas, the farmers take their goods to a particular pickup point where they put them on a truck, and the truck fills up, forms an aggregation sort of thing. It's too expensive for me as a small farmer in the north of Limpopo to take my 2 sacks of chilies to Joburg, but I take them down the road, I put them on a truck with all the other produce of other farmers. So that's a form of collaboration among the farmers where they end up sharing the transport costs. And the transporters play a key role. So I think understanding things like the role of those transporters is really important. And certainly we saw, with the COVID restrictions and so on, there were a lot of disruptions to those sort of supply lines that were problematic and showed that there wasn't a very good understanding from the regulators of some of those systems that farmers have. So the transporters and I think the pickup collective points and so on are really key for getting access to the market. And if farmers can collaborate in other ways, and they do locally, but forcing collaboration, cooperatives and so on tends not to work very well. But there's a lot of examples where farmers share transport, for example, share knowledge between each other, share market information between each other, link other farmers to agents. So that sort of informal collaboration, I think, is very critical, both on the supply side from the farmers and also on the retail side for the small and informal traders.
Thank you.
So just on the food waste then, sorry, definitely there is food waste loss with informal traders, and that would link then to the lack of poor infrastructure and so on. So one of the arguments for improving the infrastructure for example, street traders, or having more local public markets, more accessible for traders, more accessible for the public, would be to improve the infrastructure that could then reduce loss.
All right, thanks, Marcus. Dee, did you want to add something?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you, Moses. I just wanted to respond to the issues of the objectives of the study. I see there's a question as to whether the researchers looked into the issues of cold chain. We haven't done that. Indeed, these are some of the things that are coming up in terms of how can we address issues related to infrastructure to address some of these challenges. And I think Mark just touched on that in terms of how improvement in infrastructure can also reduce the losses. In terms of is this study aligned with the master plan? I think all the work that we are doing within the NMC, starting from a high level, that we need to contribute to the National Developmental Plan. I believe that AMP is also something that also feeds into the master plan, into the National Developmental Plan. So the work that we are doing indeed talks to those issues that aim to solve the triple challenges of the country. Master plan being one of them, and National Developmental Plan being one of them. And as you have seen in my introduction, I did introduce the fact that the work that we are doing is motivated by the fact that we want to conduct research that is impactful, that we are able to make an impact and contribution to solving some of these problems that the country faces. Thank you.
Suggestions in the chat room have also been recognized. There is one from Chris, and I see Mark has taken a good note of that. Please further strengthen the network so that there is room to gather more information to further enhance our work. So colleagues, yes, Mr. Nakana, please come
Director, thank you very much. There was a question during the first round, I think, raised by Kolisa that I think we missed around the use of modern technology in trading, given the COVID-19 experiences. I can't remember if we touched on that.
Please go ahead. Thanks for picking it up.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Indeed, as alluded by Kolisa, the COVID-19 experience really resulted in a situation where some of these things were really fastened. Yes, that word. And including the use of technology in handling a lot of these things that we face on a day-to-day basis. But even before COVID-19, I think there were, I think the APEC registrar is here, he may also come in. There are and there were initiatives to develop and use what was called virtual platforms of trading, or what was commonly known as virtual markets. And of course, from a regulatory point of view, you would pick on those with a view to protecting especially the farmers and or producers, to ensure that the spaces are safe and the people or entities that are operating within these virtual market platforms are also in one way or the other registered, so that should anything go wrong, there is some kind of recourse for producers. In as far as we do appreciate the kind of opportunities presented to us by modern technology, we must also keep in mind and also come up with, think of mechanisms that we can put in place to protect especially the most vulnerable within our value chains, in this case, especially the smallholder producers, so that they do not lose their hard-earned monies and or produce as a result of some of the unscrupulous elements that might take advantage of these opportunities presented by modern technology. But I think we would be in the back foot as of now. I'm not aware of any kind of regulation that has been put in place to regulate that kind of trade and within the South African space. But as I said, the APEC registrar is here. He might want to add one or two things on that. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nakana. I'm seeing two hands. Sorry, I can't tell who came in first, but I'll go alphabetically. I'm seeing Mohau Afane. You're gonna go first and then followed by S. Langa. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I essentially have one or two questions around the slide that was presented, I think, on the price comparison between your retail as well as informal trade. And I think my question essentially, is that, and I think, I mean, the question that has been asked there is quite legitimate to say, why is it that onions at the retail, I mean at the informal traders cost this much, but then at the retail point almost like double the price that we pay at an informal trade. But I think the question is whether or not that will be a fair comparison, considering one. I think you have already said that the retailers have established their own supply chain networks. Obviously, that comes with cost. And obviously, the second point is just around the cost structures that the retailers as well as the informal traders are facing. They may not necessarily be the same. So the question is whether or not that is a fair comparison. The second point, question that I wanted to check with you is just in relation to, I think you made reference to the private market, and I wanted to check the extent to which when you were conducting this study, you looked at the comparison of prices between your private markets versus the NFPMs and versus the informal traders. Thanks.
I saw before the authors take on the question, I recognized the hand of Francois. Please come on board so that they can handle the questions in a go.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Francois Nals. I'm the Registrar of the Agricultural Produce Agents Council. I'm very interested and very surprised by some of the amazing questions that are asked, and it tells us that people out there are very vigilant in terms of thinking about the model and models that we are employing at this point in time. What I would like to add to this discussion is the following. My focus of regulation pertains to fresh produce agents in this particular instance. For that purpose, we've got very comprehensive legislation, and it's a legislative requirement that all agents who act on behalf of farmers must be registered with APAC. That allows us tracking and traceability on agents, their progress, their conduct. And conduct is very important because it's also defined in our rules, which is a part of the legislation that we use. So I think it's very important to just hear from me that we are very, very focused on the protection of farmers who make use of the aggregated services of agents, and in this case, fresh produce agents. But to be true to the work that we do, we also need to explore the online platforms that are popping up, and we do so diligently, and we try and mitigate the risk there in terms of the risk for the farmer, and we've been doing so. So our alignment is to be practical, to move with the times, and to remain relevant in the interest of farmers. For those of you who don't know, we also run what we call a fidelity fund, and that serves to protect farmers when there's theft or fraud or anything of that nature that occurs when a business goes skew. I think we must recognize the important role and the amazing work that agents do on behalf of farmers. But if something goes wrong, there's always a remedy, and that remedy can be addressed through APAC and APAC processes. And anybody who would like to learn more about that, specifically the detail of how we deal with that, are more than welcome to contact myself or my team. We are currently, we've reallocated to Pretoria, but you're welcome to pop in, contact us, and we will gladly take those answers and provide advice and guidance. Thank you.
That's the message from APAC. So I'll hand over to the authors to address the questions that came before Francois. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I think the questions on the pricing I can address, and thanks for the input, Francois. And I see some people are asking practical questions about how they can link with the markets and so on. So I think APAC is one of the good starting points for that, as well as, of course, contacting JFP, the Joburg Fresh Produce Market, directly. On the prices, I think it's very fair comparison. I mean, what is it, for the buyer trying to buy onions and tomatoes to cook their meal, or cabbage or whatever, the price we can get it from and also the location is very important. If the supermarkets have set up such inefficient supply chains that those supply chains, end up resulting in retail prices twice the price, I mean, should the customer pay for that? And of course, the danger is the customer is paying for that. And that's partly because those supermarket groups also use their position to dominate retail spaces in malls, etc. So that's the sort of thing we really need to look out for. I mean, and so, yeah, we are comparing, if we're interested in food accessibility, especially for poorer people, then it's entirely fair to compare those. And as I said, yeah, it shows the efficiency. So I think it was how, I mean, if you, as I say, and that's why I'm showing, what I'm trying to show is that this linkage of the fresh produce markets with street trade and so on is efficient. And it also creates more livelihoods along the way. So, and I'm emphasizing this because there's so much, government agricultural development has put a lot of focus on sort of getting farmers into value chains and so on. But the value chains are not delivering very well for poorer consumers, and they're highly inaccessible for most farmers, whereas the municipal markets, despite the constraints and the complaints and so on, are actually far more accessible. So let's rather build on that which is accessible and is actually quite efficient at the moment. And where there are difficulties, let's try and work out those difficulties and find better ways of doing it. Of course, there's a range of ways that the street traders do, manage to keep their prices down. I mean, sometimes they're more nimble in their buying. They will wait till the point in the day when prices are lower. One of the things you see that their throughput is often very quick. So you get a lot of the street traders who they buy every morning and they've sold everything by the evening. So they're less worried about long shelf life and things like that. So, but that's all just part of what they're doing to make those foodstuffs accessible. Of course, there's also debate on quality, but then a lot of the time, quality in the street is great, and it's again about consumer choice. If you want to be able to go to a Woolworths and buy it in a nice packaging or something, have that choice, but let other people who would prefer just to get it, 10 rand cheaper a kilo, let them have that choice as well. And I think that's really important. On the private markets, yeah, we haven't got that sort of data. And I think that's why I was emphasizing there is actually need for more research, because what are the outcomes of these changes in the markets? We don't know enough about that. So we're seeing changes going on. We're seeing more of the markets going private and so on, but we don't have enough information on what the impact of that is. What happens when you don't have the regulation? So we can complain about the regulation in the markets, but what happens when you don't have it? Is it better or worse? We can't be sure of that. So that's why we're appealing for, we do think there's a need for more research. And it's nice to have some members from the board of the Joburg Fresh Produce Market here. Sorry for any errors we might have made in presentation and so on, but it's good to have you here and we'd welcome engagement. But I'm just also raising that you're here because there's more data we could be getting or gathering at the market level that would also help us understand better the nature of our buyers and our sellers, that could help us, understand better what's going on and how we could bring about transformation. Thanks. The one thing we have seen anecdotally, one of the problems that seems to happen is if the markets get too small, then there can be a lack of competition between the agents, and that can have a problem in the prices. So when you've talked to traders in some of the smaller towns where there's smaller markets, then there seems to be a price problem, but we don't have enough data to sort of state that categorically. It's more anecdotal, having spoken to traders in smaller towns, that they don't seem to get the same good deals out of the markets that you can get from the big markets, the Joburg, Tshwanes, and Durbans, and so on. So that does seem to indicate and worries me that if we get to below a certain point, then not enough competition, and that's going to have a negative effect on prices.
All right. Seeing that there are no more questions coming and no more comments, kind of remarks also coming through, I'll take this opportunity to thank the team that put up this work, that worked on this chapter, and have been able to disseminate to a broad audience. To our stakeholders that had time to attend, we also gladly welcome you and appreciate your efforts. For anything that possibly didn't come right, the NMC, with all our collaborators, we often strive to do better and better and better. So please, our lines are open. Don't hesitate to reach us to highlight areas where you can do much better. We strive to serve you better. Having said that, allow me to say that I'm reading the last email here that's coming in. Okay, I think it's being attended to by Mark. So allow me to say that it's been a pleasure facilitating this webinar, and also to say that we've come to the end of this session. We look forward to further engagements. Please always show up and give us all the input we need to contribute towards a better sector. A great day further. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Moses. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.